Hi, everybody. It's a great turnout. And thank you, Dante, and thank you, independent booksellers around the country. You know, Dante and the previous owners, the former owners before Dante, they always supported local writers. Every writer I know in this community that wrote a book, we found it here at Northtown Books. So thank you, Dante. Okay. I'm going to keep my comments really brief, but this is payback because Brian said some things about 6 years ago that touched my heart, and so back at you, pal. I met Brian when he and Becky moved here and joined the local Veterans for Peace, Chapter 56. And Brian and Becky really energized our chapter. We started this chapter in 1990 when the first Gulf War started with George Bush Sr. And we'd gone into the doldrums for a while, and Brian got to town with Becky, and they reinvigorated and energized this chapter. And the work we've done while he was here and since then has been really impressive. So it really it brought new blood to our group. I started talking to Brian. I was teaching up at Humboldt State in sociology, and a lot of the dialogues and discussions we had really helped me to formulate really powerful and provocative questions for my students in dealing with things like the social construction of reality, the social construction of war, and the culture of violence in the society, and what they could do about it as change agents. So I was always enriched when Brian and I found some time together and devoted that to how could we turn my students in the altruism class and in the race and ethnic relations class into critical thinkers and agents for change. You know, Brian will talk. I know. I'm just going to go over a couple of things, a couple of points that I think are important. Brian had an epiphany in Vietnam in a village, and he really got in touch with his soul, he says, and with his humanity. And he saw the other, the dehumanized other, the Vietnamese, as human beings. And that allowed him, you know, racism has a tendency to try to dehumanize the other, but it also limits the humanity of the racist or the imperialist. And Brian got in touch with his own humanity in that village. He's worked for the last 40 years in he's one of the most central figures in the peace movement in this country. And it's because of going through that Gandhian questioning of, is he the oppressor himself? He's part of an oppressive system. He needs to first look inside and see in what ways he's acting as an oppressor. And once he began to deal with those issues, as we all have to, he began to become a powerful agent for change. That Gandhian quest was important. Brian will talk, I know, about the culture of violence in this society, and how we're all conditioned by that culture of violence, and how we have to transcend that. But first we have to understand that the oligarchs are in positions of power to define reality. Power was once explained to me as the ability to define reality and to get other people to accept that reality as their own. And that culture of violence is something that young men and young women are conditioned by, and allows them to not question, go into the military, and take the lives of people they don't even know, in cultures they know nothing about. And Brian sensitized people in this community, and certainly sensitized me, and through me, my students, to understanding how we dehumanize the other and then justify poor treatment based on that dehumanization. You know, my students dealt with the social construction of reality and how we use symbols, powerful symbols, to create a construction of nationalism in an attempt to justify the violence that we often are involved in. His book is not only a personal journal, but it's a socio-historical journal that looks at the context of the culture of violence and how that affected him. It affected our generation. It affects all of us. So those people who feel like a stranger in a strange land in this culture of violence, maybe through Brian's book, I think, can begin to have some courage to reclaim their humanity, reclaim their altruism, reclaim the potential, their human potential for compassion. And I think Brian's book can help people to reach that higher state of being. I just want to share one quick thing with you, and then I'm done. Daniel Ellsberg wrote the foreword for the introduction to Brian's book, and just 2 paragraphs. Daniel says, and he's quoting Brian, all people equally. Those thoughts were spelled out 2 months later on the morning of the train assault in his notes for that occasion, supplied to me by Brian. They raised themes of profound import if they were to be taken seriously and acted upon. As it turned out, they were, by Brian and his companions on the tracks that day. Brian wrote, the authorities will be notified of the resistance action on the tracks so that they have a choice of suspending movement of munitions, removing our bodies, or running over us. One truth seems clear, Brian wrote. Once the train carrying the munitions moves past our human blockade, if it does, other human beings in other parts of the world will be killed or maimed. We are not worth more, they are not worth less, emphasis added. Let us commit to ourselves and the world. We will claim our dignity, our self-respect, and honor by resisting with our lives and dollars, no matter what it takes, any further policies designed to kill others in our name. In each of our names, ultimately, we are not worth more, they are not worth less. This is the story of one, Ellsberg goes on to write, this is a story of one man's evolution from being a normal, ordinary, patriotic American, capable of acquiescing, even participating in a war of horrendous destruction against people in Indochina. Enemies, they were called, along with their families and other, quote, collateral damage. To become a human who risked and sacrificed his legs to try to stop our carnage in Central America, one who has ever since has devoted his life to warning fellow humans about the harm they are inflicting and the dangers they are posing to all others and to most of forms of life on the planet. That's what Daniel had to say about Brian's book. Without further ado, please help us welcome back to Arcata, his second home, Brian Willson.